I would like to remind you that for more Microsoft webcasts, you can go to microsoft.com/webcast. Thanks again for joining us for today's presentation, TechNet Webcast, How Microsoft IT Developed Best Practices in Offering PowerPivot as a Service. Now it is my pleasure to introduce today's presenter, Sanjay Soni. Sanjay, you now have the floor.
Great. Hi, my name is Sanjay Soni. I'm a BI Platforms Evangelist, part of Microsoft IT, BI Engineering Organization, and today I'm going to share with you how Microsoft IT developed best practices in offering PowerPivot as a service, and also I will start with a Microsoft PowerPivot overview for those of you who are new to this. So my agenda is I'm going to start with a Microsoft IT BI Engineering EDW context. So I would like to explain to you what is the scenario for 3+ years, and we have been delivering BI within Microsoft using consolidated business intelligence, part of Microsoft IT, and also we have been working on EDW. So we'll start with that context. Then we'll talk about the business challenge that we had before PowerPivot, and how is PowerPivot going to help us, if you will, in the form of EDW PowerPivot sandbox hosted instance. And then we'll also go through the PowerPivot overview and demo with IT scenario. So you might have seen PowerPivot demos before, but then I'll explain to you the real scenario we are working on within EDW at Microsoft. The SharePoint integration and demo. So we'll talk about the SharePoint integration and how SharePoint is helping towards PowerPivot scenario. Customer onboarding. So hopefully you'll really enjoy this part here. How have we been onboarding customers as part of the beta program, the TAP program within Microsoft IT? We have a hosted instance. How have we been onboarding customers to this PowerPivot online service, TAP, within Microsoft? And we'll talk about the technical architecture, deployment, onboarding site and process overview, and IT dashboard demo. And of course, towards the end, I'll share with you some other lessons learned while delivering BI to the masses for the last 3 years. So let's get going. So many of you might have seen demos of consolidated business intelligence. We did a webcast a couple of weeks ago. So Microsoft IT BI Engineering CBI context. So let's just start with that. So 3 years ago, I used to say this within Microsoft. Imagine a world where all employees at a company like Microsoft can someday go to one BI portal, one destination, and based on their Windows account, they get to see all of their BI, business intelligence, for entire Microsoft, for all organizations, everything in one place. So that was a world of imagination 3 years ago. We started with one application, 300 users. Now we have 100+ applications. I'm happy to say today, we have 30,000+ users worldwide, globally, using this solution at Microsoft. So the business problem we solved with CBI was, okay, reports, scorecards, and dashboards are everywhere. How does a person, let's say myself, Sanjay Soni, how can I go to this one place where I can get all of my BI at Microsoft? So we created this one enterprise report catalog of reports for all applications, regions, and BI technologies. And we delivered that catalog, if you would, in form of a hosted BI portal solution, first of all, using SharePoint, and then a hosted service, BI as a service, where we had SharePoint, Performance Point, Excel services, reporting services. What we have done recently is we have added PowerPivot, if you would, as part of SharePoint 2010 instance in parallel to CBI for right now. We have added this to EDW sandbox infrastructure and reports. And easily, when PowerPivot reports are created, those are Excel services reports. At the end of the day, the reports that get created for end users are Excel services reports. Those could very well be added to the enterprise report catalog that I've shown to you before in CBI, right? So that solution we've had for almost 3 years in production at Microsoft, 30,000 users now. Then the other parallel activity that happened at Microsoft was really, our goal was to create EDW, Enterprise Data Warehouse at Microsoft. So obviously, as you can imagine, just like your EDW scenario, our scenario was we started with source systems, the staging area, right? And then, of course, ETL is happening into It is EDW, Central Data Store, and we are using SQL Server MDS or MDM product before for enterprise dimensional modeling, and we have obviously common taxonomies, everything into EDW. Then we had data marts and queues, created for customers to use within Microsoft. And then we had this BI toolbox, the Microsoft CBI scenario I described to you right there. And then we deliver the BI through Internet Explorer. But you know this, EDW takes time to create. It takes years sometimes, or it will take months to create EDW. So we cannot have our business users wait for EDW to finish and then access data, right? That will be too late. So what we did at Microsoft is we created the CBI solution first, and we consolidated BI from disparate data sources, reports, report catalogs into this one catalog, one portal. Everything started happening. And as we were creating EDW, it was very easy for us to switch the data sources from the not so clean data sources onto versus the cleaned EDW. Now the problem comes in, okay, EDW is there, your CBI catalog there, but what if there is some data in EDW for which proper data marts have not been created, or for which the requirements are still being refined, prototyped, That's where PowerPivot comes into play. So what we did is we created this PowerPivot sandbox area. Let's call it EDW PowerPivot sandbox. And we allowed our users to, still allowing our users to actually access data from EDW and from their other data sources to be inside of PowerPivot. And they could munch the data, they could play with data, they could prototype data with data and create their own reports using self-service BI. And then publish those reports to the hosted solution, obviously, that we have. They have a URL of the reports. They can simply add it to the CBI catalog, right? And then deliver reports to the masses at Microsoft using simple Internet Explorer window, right? So that's the overall, that's where PowerPivot fits in right there as a sandbox tool, right? So as I said before, so then, that's where it fits in. But the problem again was, how do we create a self-service BI sandbox environment where power users can prototype with EDW data and or their own data? And most of the customers really start with their own data because they have data. They have been doing their analysis in Excel forever. So they want to prototype their own data as well as EDW data. And they can create and publish reports for the masses in an agile manner. The key here is agile manner. Obviously, business knows better about their data than IT, more than IT, so they can do a better job of creating their own reports easily and publish it to the masses. So IT is good at hosting and everything, so that's where that was a business challenge, right? So we solved that problem by creating a self-service environment for power users to access EDW data or their own data, for them to be able to profile their data. Now, this is important. So for them to understand their data better even, this PowerPivot is being used for them to be able to profile their own data, give us better requirements for the EDW, and prototype their own applications using BI Toolbox. And as I said before, they can publish the reports using Excel, I would say Excel services, to the hosted Excel services solution, and end users simply access all that through thin client environment. And so as you can see here, this is what's happening. This is how CBI is being used. So we have data sources, our users, they're able to munch data from various data sources into this PowerPivot file. They can create PowerPivot tables or other reports. They can publish it to PowerPivot SharePoint servers, or they can also add the reports to the CBI catalog, as I said. End of the day, our consumers simply consume Excel services reports, and they can consume PowerPivot files as a data source through reporting services, Excel, CPS, etc. So what is PowerPivot then? So that was the context I wanted to give you in terms of EDW first. Now we'll start from scratch with an idea of PowerPivot. Many of you are not familiar with PowerPivot, so we'll start with that. And so imagine a world where your superpower users who live in Excel, right? They've been creating reports in Excel. If they could import millions of rows of data from your EDW or from some other data sources, they would bring that data into Excel. they could create relationships easily, and the file that comes out at the end of the day is not a simple Excel file. Think of it as a special cube file, special analysis services cube storage, the fourth storage besides MOLAP, PROLAP, POLAP, and the new storage, right? Form, compressed file comes out, and that is more or less an analysis services cube if you think about it in loose terms. And then they're able to merge data, they're able to create pivot tables from it, and they're able to publish it to the SharePoint servers, where it could be shared with the masses, if you would, right? And the SharePoint server is hosted by IT. And IT has access to all those shadow applications which were not available. IT did not even have visibility to those things, and those are available on servers. So IT now knows what is actually going on with those shadow applications. IT has visibility to those. IT can have better conversations with customers. So the business problem that PowerPivot solves is that no matter what tool you give to users, and it's a true story. So we have CVI, hosted solution within Microsoft IT for 3 years now in production. And we had all kinds of tools, reporting services, performance point, Pro Clarity, external services, everything hosted. Number one question customers our users asked was, how can I export to Excel? So users cannot quit Excel, and they need to get it done now. And as a result, what happens is even if you have other tools, they simply ask, they export to Excel, they keep that Excel file on their own desktop, they create their own BI, if you would. And next thing you know, hundreds of users are accessing that file on their desktops. What if that person goes on vacation? And what if application crashes? All users are screaming, okay, IT, do you know how can I access that application? And IT has no idea that such application even existed, right? So IT's nightmare obviously is all kinds of spread marks all over the place within IT. IT doesn't even know about, and business has those. So how do we make it like a nice proposition between the two groups, information workers and IT groups? Well, why don't we include Excel as part of the solutions? So intent sharing, the second bullet is important. Intent sharing in a way that provides visibility to IT. So that is important. So we give incentives to power users so through that, the solutions that they create using PowerPivot, they actually publish it to SharePoint, hosted by IT. That's where analysis services is running as a service within SharePoint, and IT will finally have visibility. And why will they do that? I'll tell you why. Why would power users publish to SharePoint after a few slides? At the end of the day, allow IT to add value without being a bottleneck. So who are the content producers and users? The target folks who will be using PowerPivot, part of Excel 2010, are those less than 4% people who create reports within Excel. And then most of the community, 96% of people, will simply consume reports. The people who work in Office every day or even on Internet Explorer, they'll be able to consume the reports using Internet Explorer services. So again, just to re-emphasize before I start the demo, IT and BI professionals are good at hosting the enterprise-grade BI stack, so we'll be hosting SharePoint. That's where PowerPivot component is running, and also another PowerPivot component live in Excel, where power users are able to collect, clean, integrate, enrich, and report on data. And then they're also able to publish the reports to SharePoint. And on SharePoint, IT has visibility to this IT dashboards where they can view, manage, secure, intervene, and act. Okay? So again, to really sum it up, PowerPivot really has 4 components. Excel hosted client. As part of Excel 2010, there's an add-in. I'm going to show you in the slide and the demo right now. And that's where the client component is. And then there's the coolest part, I think, is really this in-memory BI engine. So you can actually have hundreds of millions of rows inside of Excel PowerPivot workspace, a special PowerPivot workspace where you can merge data, sort data, and good stuff, because analysis is that magic. And then there's SharePoint for managed collaboration, and then analysis services for integration. So the file that gets created at the end is more or less analysis services queue file. So this could be used as a data source for reporting services reports or for even performance point reports. So that's the key here. So again, information worker producers, they publish web-based BI solutions, and they can also refresh data automatically. They can publish the reports. Once they publish the Excel file, they could mention the refresh frequency against data sources. So let's start with a PowerPivot demo, client demo with IT scenario. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start Excel 2010. My demo scenario, just so that you know, is very simple. So I am for the remaining presentation, at least for the next few minutes, assume that I am a power user. I'm a power user and within Microsoft, and all I want to do is I want to create a simple report. I want to find out what kind of profile of people buy Xbox systems or Zooms, and we want to know and what geography are they coming from. So essentially, what I'm going to do is I'm going to approach IT first, and IT say, okay, let's say Chris is my IT person. I'm going to ask him, okay, can I have this information? And IT will say, okay, we have an EDW, but we only have information, let's say in this case, for products and for revenue and expenses. But let's say we do not have information about demographics of customers or geography even. Obviously, we have masked the data and it's a fictitious scenario, but based on real scenario within IT, we have made it masked, right? So fine, we go to PowerPivot. What we do is, if IT does not have all the data, I'm a power user. So I'm going to find data within Microsoft, and I'm going to munge it myself. The way I'll do it, I'll go to IT for their two tables that they have for products and for revenue expenses, and then I'm going to go to some other data sources, could be SAP or somewhere where we have demographics information and also that we have geography information. So what I'm going to do is open Excel 2010, PowerPivot right here, and ribbon, and I'm going to just go to PowerPivot window, and this is a special workspace, right? Special workspace that opened up for me. This is where PowerPivot or Gemini, was the code name internally, is running. So if this is a special workspace where in-memory BI engine is running, and you could actually have hundreds of millions of rows. So from here you can import data from databases, from SQL Server, Access, and yes, you can use analysis services as a data source. From other sources, you could use third-party databases, SQL Server, Access, Oracle, Teradata, Sybase, other OLEDB data sources, analysis services, as I said, could be a data source, and even reporting services reports could be data sources. Very important feature where you could use some other reporting service reports as a data source for PowerPivot. Of course, Excel files, text files. Right here, from text files, Excel files, from data feeds, reporting services, as I said. So in this demo, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start simple from SQL Server. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put dot here, and so I'm going to import these two tables here. I have a database here, small mark external, for example, and of course you have mass data, as I said. This is IT warehouse where you can import two tables from. Select from a list of tables and views to choose the data to import. So I'm going to go there, and I'm going to select the two tables, product information, and also a fact table which has my revenue and expenses. So there are two tables, and I'm going to finish. So these are the two tables I'm importing from EDW in this case, and I will see that those two tables that I'm importing become two tabs, if you will, two worksheets, right, within Excel. Product information and the fact table information. So these are the two tabs. Now I'm going to import the demographics information. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my desktop on this machine, and that's where my demographics information is there. And I'm going to open it. So here's my demographics information. I'm simply going to go to the first row here, and I'm going to import this data. Very simple. Let's just go there. Here we go. I'm going to rename this. I know that this is demographics key, demographics key, enter, and Control A, right click, copy. So I'm just copying this Excel file which has my demographics information somehow. So I go to this, go back to my book 1 where I was, and I simply paste this here, and I'm going to create the link table. So that button that I clicked, create linked table. Please remember that. So that way, you're also linked to your data sources. If data sources change, you can also refresh data in PowerPivot itself, and the models will also refresh. So it's connected. It's not a static import. It's connected live to your data sources. Once you publish, you can start up refresh frequencies on SharePoint, and we can do that. So right now, it's importing this data. And while it's doing that, I want to take you to this other file, other data source that we have here, and which is the geography information right here. And this is my tab delimited file for geography, where I have information about my geography. So think of it as a SAP export or something like that. And once I do that, I can also import this geography information there as well. And that way I can import all 3 data sources inside of this PowerPivot workspace, and I can start working with it, right? So obviously there is something happening in this demo. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my old demo. I'll come back to this in a few minutes. Okay. All right. So let's go back to the slides a bit, and we'll come back. Okay, I'll show you the rest of the demo after a few slides here, and let's just get going. The SharePoint integration. So once we create that, I'll show you in a minute once we create that file and we manage the data and everything else. So where does the SharePoint come into play? So SharePoint integration, once we create that file, and we can publish that or upload that file to SharePoint right there, and then all of the PowerPivot components are inside of SharePoint. The file is a special cube file that we publish to SharePoint, and the solutions are documents. Those are really the workbooks, at the end of the day. And Excel services enables publishing. So your end users can simply access the reports using thin client experience, if you will. Okay? So consumers can easily discover new solutions. They can slice and dice with a thin client, right? They don't have to have anything installed on the desktops to consume the reports that get published to SharePoint. And we go back to the demo SharePoint. So I have an idea, or you could go to another machine for this Xanax stuff. So, okay. So yeah, definitely I'll have to stop this. So I'm going to go to the box now. So let's start another box here. So let's start the demo. Sorry, that one had some issues. That Hyper-V had some issues. So what we'll do is we'll start this demo one more time from within another box. I'm going to start Excel, data code running, obviously. So let's see if we can do it quickly here. Excel. Excel data. So we're just simply loading Excel 2010 here, and we're going to just do this very quickly one more time, and then we'll go from there. All right, Excel 2010, PowerPivot window. Once we launch PowerPivot window, that special workspace area opens for you, where you can have millions of rows. You can munch the data from all kinds of data sources. So preparing PowerPivot environment from database, from SQL Server, and dot. I'm going to go to a small Mars external here with my IT warehouse where I have those 2 tables. Next. And here I'm going to select the product information and the measures and click Finish. So these are my two tables being imported right now. That should be good. Once it comes back, I'm going to, in the meantime, why don't we simply open that the file that we had issues with before, demographics, information, and here we are simply going to select here demographics key. That's the one. Control A, Control C, and then what we're going to do is simply go back to my Excel file I was talking about and Control V. So once we do this, I'm going to create linked table, and hopefully this time we'll have this one coming back inside of this PowerPivot workspace right there. Third tab, you see this? This one is demographics. So I'm simply going to rename this demographics. Okay? So we have demographics information in this tab right here. We have fact table. We have product information. All we need now is the fourth file from text file. So here we go. We go to desktop, and I know that I have geography information here. So I'm going to import geography information here in a tab delimited file where we have use first row as column headers. There we go. So this is my fourth table or source, if you will, right here. So now I have geography information, demographics, fact table, and product. So what we're going to do is now we're going to create relationships. How do we create relationships? Let's just go to the geography information and then table and create relationship. So I know some of you might be thinking this is the key stuff, but guess what? Those people who live in Excel, they do know how tables are related. And if you do have relationships inside of SQL Server database, those will be imported automatically, or any other data source will be recognized. But here I don't have relationships, so I'm going to create those. So I know that geography information is related to this fact table through this sales district ID. So create relationship. And now I'm going to simply go to the next one. Next one is my demographics. So let's go to demographics, create relationship here, and we're going to do this. The demographics ID. So you see the name is different. By the way, this is really smart. Relationship cannot be created in the requested direction. When you click create, the relationship will be reversed, which is good. You don't have to worry which direction. So to do that, demographics is done. And the last one is, of course, my product information. So I'm going to create a relationship for product ID. So now that we have created relationships, I can also have a visual representation of all of the relationships right here, manage relationships. We're good. We're ready to generate the cube, if you would. Pivot table, single pivot table, new worksheet. So now I have this pivot table, and once I save this file, this is the magic. Once I save this file, that's the special cube file, the fourth storage type I was talking about, and we're going to say webcast demo file, webcast demo file. So I've saved this file. Now let's just create a brand new report here, if you would, a simple pivot table report, and find out what's going on. So super division name. Before we start that, I'm going to simply select revenue and expenses data as part of this pivot table. Then we go to this product hierarchy, super division name on rows and columns. You've done this before. What's cool about Excel 2010 though is really the slicers, So you can have slicers here, and again, you can have all kinds of information on vertical slicers, and then you could also have information on slicers horizontal about my regions, So I could simply select this right here, and you see this is a visual representation, right? So essentially, I have right here, there you go. I can really do all kind of analysis here. These are my visual representations through which I can find out what kind of people buy Xbox systems, right? This is all fictitious data, of course. So that's how you do it. Now, let's just publish this file. So we already saved it locally, right? I saved it. Now I'm just going to publish it though. I'm going to try to, so I can publish it, from Excel, or I could go to SharePoint and show you from there. So to save time, honestly speaking, I'm not going to actually publish it, but I'm simply going to go to this particular. Okay, so I'm going to go to one of my SharePoint servers here, where I have PowerPivot on the server, SharePoint server, if you would. So I could always upload the file from within Excel, right? I can publish to SharePoint. But I'm just showing you what do you see once you publish the file on SharePoint, when you go there. So PowerPivot Gallery, you'll see a PowerPivot Gallery here, and that's where you see all the files that are published. Using Silverlight, you have access to all the files that have been published, and if you have access, you'll be able to see those, obviously. So this is where you see the files, and there's a nice Silverlight view here, and which have been published here. For example, demo reports right there, So I can always open these reports, right? I can open these reports just like that. So once I open the reports, at the end of the day, after you upload this file that you created, and you upload to SharePoint, your end users can simply go to this thin client URL, if you would, and they'll be able to see the reports over here. They'll be able to not only see the data, but they can also always, choose what kind of data they want to slice and dice by, and they can see the reports, right? That's that. But the cool part really is this refresh frequency right here. So you can manage data refreshes. And what I mean to say is, per data source that you imported when you create this PowerPivot model, you could actually manage data sources and say, I want to refresh this data source every week, every day, or what time data refresh frequencies can be set up. And this way, right there. You can enable data refreshes, and you can say, I want to refresh this data from data sources daily, weekly, monthly, after business hours, during this time, connect using these credentials, and also right here, you can choose that per data source. So that is cool because in a way, analysis services is running as a service inside of SharePoint, and that is enabling all kinds of data refreshes from original data sources to this cube file that is now published on SharePoint. So this is how you convince your Power users to publish that to SharePoint. They can enable data refreshes, and it's on IT supported infrastructure. It's still, they have the power of self-service. They can create their own BI in fast manner, right? All right. So that's the goal. And end of the day, you have that. But also, one of the cool parts I like is right here. You could use that file that you published here as a data source for report builder. For example, right here, just like this one. So you can choose report builder here, new report builder report. This is a cube file. So you could actually launch report builder, for example, and you could use this file as a data source for report builder report, even performance point, wherever analysis services is being used, right, as a data source, especially. So that's the overall demo, if you would, for this PowerPivot, creating something from scratch and then publishing to SharePoint, and end users can simply go to the thin client URL. And of course, those of you who have heard about CBI, you can take that URL, publish it as a report inside of CBI catalog, and then there we go. The whole circle is closed. So now let's just go back to some of the slides we had, and we'll keep going. So now we talk about something very interesting that you hopefully like it as well, is customer onboarding to the PowerPivot online service tab within Microsoft. So we have been running, we call it internally the onboarding program, if you will. So we have been onboarding customers to CBI for 3+ years now. As I said, we started one application, 100+ applications now. So we are following similar model for PowerPivot as well. And we started like 3 months ago with an onboarding program to the beta servers, beta code. So goal was to give better feedback to product teams at the end of the day, but also for some of our 15 customers that we started onboarding to this tab program, beta program, we give them good feedback. We provide them a service, online service, where they could bring up all kinds of applications, publish it to the IT hosted scenario, and that way IT has visibility as well. So IT professionals, what is IT getting from all this PowerPivot? Well, we manage familiar services, again, like SharePoint and other BI tools. We reduce randomizing requests. If you are hosting everything here, we know we can give them a nice SLA and then track usage of solutions. So we can have, I'll show you in a few minutes, we have some IT dashboards, you can track usage, and then you get to discover mission critical app solutions. This is the biggest problem that PowerPivot solves for IT. The shadow applications which were on people's desktops are now hosted on IT hosted infrastructure. IT has visibility, and if there are some solutions which are very popular, we can have a good dialogue with business folks. Okay, maybe this is something you might want to bring to EDW or to IT hosted data set as well. It's a nice thing to start a dialogue. Here's how we did it. So we started with this infrastructure. Almost 4 months ago, we started with a dev environment. We had physical server, 4 Hyper-Vs carved out, right here, test environment. So the key to hosting your servers in terms of PowerPivot is to have good memory. So we would recommend a nice amount of memory because at the end of the day, it's in-memory BI. So 32 gigs of RAM we had here, or dev and test even. Even dev and test we had good memory because we were creating a platform. We started with 15 customers, right, an online service. IT is hosting the servers. But then goal was to really grow this to a big extent. So we have UAT environment, user acceptance testing environment, and then production environment. So what we have is 2 servers, 4 quad core, again, effective 8 CPUs, 32 gigs of RAM, network load balancing cluster. So now that this is all part of SharePoint, you can use NLB for performance reasons. And also, Microsoft's criteria is to have SQL Server separate from IIS or SharePoint even. So then we have 2 metadata servers, 2 quad core, 8 gigs of RAM, and storage is the key obviously everywhere. And then SQL failover cluster there. So SQL failover cluster for metadata databases and SQL Server, and then the front-end servers, if you would, where we have SharePoint and PowerPivot running the service there. And same environment, almost, I would say same environment we have for production. The UAT environment, user acceptance testing or pre-production environment, is similar to production environments in terms of configuration. So very simple, we dev something, we test, and then we created this environment for UAT. The customers have their own dev and test environments. So that's the key, folks. We do not host. We have 15 customers, right? So right now for PowerPivot. So, and we have 58 customers for CBI. So we never hosted their dev and test environment. We said, folks, keep your own dev and test environment. We're going to host for you a UAT environment and production environment. So this is where they can dev and test in their own environments, and you have a shared UAT environment, shared production environment. What I'm showing you in this picture, dev and test, is our own environment when we create releases of any software. Okay, that's the goal. And as of right now, we only have Redmond PowerPivot servers right here, which we are going to roll out into production, right? This is going to go live once RTM hits, right? But then Dublin, in Dublin and in Singapore, we have regional deployment in place for CBI. So we hope to leverage some of the environment we have for CBI for PowerPivot as well. So this environment exists for CBI and also in Singapore for CBI. Does not exist right now for PowerPivot. But our goal is to use that environment for PowerPivot as well. But what we have right now is Redmond environment for PowerPivot. So one of the key lessons we learned from our CBI experience was definitely plan for a regional deployment or set right expectations. So if your cubes are going to be in Dublin, for example, and if your report servers are in Redmond, obviously there will be network latency. So either set the right expectations up front that your reports are not going to be too fast, or set up a regional environment, SharePoint 2010 for PowerPivot. So once we create this environment I talked about, right, that's for user acceptance testing. We had SharePoint servers and the code, everything on the servers. Then we enabled PowerPivot features, obviously. Then we also added Recording Services 2008 R2. Because Reporting Services 2008 R2 has this Report Builder 3.0, very visual. I would highly encourage you all to try that. Highly visual tool to create reports. So you could use PowerPivot models as a data source for Reporting Services 2008 R2. We're also enabling Performance Point Server Services 2010. And then what we did is we created SharePoint 2010 sites for individual business groups. So this is important, folks. We had 15 customers. So we created their own sites. Chris and my team, he created SharePoint sites for individual customers. They had their own sites. Then we added appropriate site owners for each of these sites. So let's say there is a customer called MS BI Operations. They're one of our real customers. So we added an site owner or owners from that team. Let's say there are 2 people who are site owners. Then we gave control of sites to those business owners to enable self-service BI. So those 2 people could add individual aliases to members or visitors. Think of members as contributors, visitors as readers. So contributors were the ones who would be able to basically create PowerPivot models and also publish those to the SharePoint sites of those customers. So those folks, once they were able to publish, they added visitors. This is where 95% of people lie in any organization. They simply go to Excel services, they consume the reports, and the cool part is IT does what IT is best at, and business does what business is best at. So this was self-service BI in action. Once we created the sites and they had the owners and everything, guess what? We just have weekly calls with those customers, and they were able to create their own models when they wanted, and they published it to IT-supported infrastructure, the SharePoint servers I was talking about. And then they were able to do it in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whenever they want. So IT does not have to be involved with fixing small things to the report, right? A small parameter, for example, right? That's a self-service BI. Now, how did we do it? Now, let me share with you our learning, if you will, over 3 years, how we have been doing this internally within Microsoft IT using CBI, and similar model we are following for our pivot now, is that we create onboarding site. So let's say there is a solution, for example, so for PowerPivot even, right? So we have a SharePoint server where we have a SharePoint site for each customer, right? Where they go and access PowerPivot. Totally unrelated to that site is an onboarding site. So we create this onboarding site. I'm going to show you a demo today as well for the onboarding site. So we create an onboarding site where we have marketing information, training information, onboarding information about PowerPivot service that we are offering. So we create a step-by-step onboarding process. We have online onboarding questionnaire forms created. So this is, and then onboarding guide, and then we have regular sync-up calls. So this is a good service. There's an onboarding team. This is different from support team. So let me say this one more time. There is an operations team, there is a support team, and there is a separate onboarding team. That's my team. That's myself and 2-3 other people we have. So we create this onboarding experience for people. We get onboarding sites. I'm going to show you right now. Why not? Onboarding and training site. So before we launch any service, we create a website like this one. This is an internal website I'm showing you in this. So Microsoft IT, BI Engineering, PowerPivot onboarding site. And there we have step-by-step process right there, onboarding step-by-step. And this is a nice visual form if you were step-by-step using, we had InfoPath before and also Visio. But this is Visio and SharePoint right now. So there's no InfoPath anymore in this. So we have a visual process. How do customers onboard? So we have a 10 PowerPivot overview or demo session. So we do weekly sessions within Microsoft IT, or bi-weekly sometimes, depends on the session. And we invite, we have a free invitation, attend the session. Anywhere you click on this step-by-step, something happens. So then they can fill out onboarding questionnaire. They can obtain cost estimate. So obviously it's a BI as a service. So there's a cost associated with maintenance. So we have a cost model in works right now for PowerPivot. We've had that for CBI. Then we charge individual businesses to be on this BI as a service every year. It's a yearly charge. Now, one thing I have a good tip for you. Number one is if you provide good service, and if you do not charge an individual customer too much, customers are willing to pay. When I say customers, for us, our internal business unit. You do a good job of providing them weekly calls with onboarding experience, training experience, right? Evangelizing with new technology. And if you provide all that good stuff, you have a bunch of hardware costs, hosting costs, right? There's an onboarding team cost, there's support team, 24/7 support team, right? If you have all that good service, BI as a service, then you can charge your individual businesses every year to be on the solution. That's how we've been doing CBI, and that's how we anticipate doing PowerPivot. And then, so anywhere you click here, the prototype or evaluate PowerPivot, review weekly calls, submit onboarding agreement funding approval. So there's an evaluation time for customers to try. Once they agree to this, they can submit onboarding agreement, funding approval, and then the PowerPivot team engages with appropriate support teams, regular meetings. That's how we do it. So if you think about it, so this is my fill out onboarding questionnaire. People click on it, right? I want to show you live. So we have a SharePoint form shows up. Why did we create all these forms here? This is the best way for you to reduce your number of emails on this topic. Somebody wants to use PowerPivot. Well, we just tell them to go to this website. They fill these questionnaires. And then this questionnaire information is submitted to a database, SharePoint list, which is a database if you think about it. By the way, before SharePoint list, we had this information in SQL Server databases. But now we have done, I think this is a better way of doing things. We have all these forms for 15 plus customers right now stored in SharePoint list. But you could do it in the SQL Server database. The point is, once this form is submitted, an email automatically comes to my team. And we get this email request, okay, somebody has submitted this information. We simply go to that SharePoint list database and we create a cost estimate for them. Very automated process. We create a cost estimate, send them by email, and then they say, oh, we want to evaluate for 3 weeks first. Then we give them free evaluation time. They evaluate this technology in our environment, in our sandbox environment, UAT environment. Once they agree to this, then they can commit to onboarding. Then we have weekly calls with them, and then we onboard them until they go live. So once they go live, then onboarding team steps away, support team kicks in. Support team is supporting them 24/7 support and providing them support for any issues. Onboarding team is looking for other customers in parallel. So that's how we grew our business of CBI from one application to 100 plus applications, from 58 plus businesses. That's how we are planning to do, or we are working on already with PowerPivot, and we'll continue to do that. So that was overall onboarding process, and let's just go back now. Now training, folks, training, very important thing. So we provide jumpstart trainings to our customers within Microsoft so that they are more familiar. The power users are familiar. Once you train them, they can create their own BI easily, right? So very, very quickly, I want to just show you that as well. The training site we have right there, training. It's not only about weekly sessions that are listed here, upcoming training videos and everything else, but also some Silverlight, right there, videos. The Academy mobile channel here, where on our channel, we have lots of recordings internally available for all the sessions that we do. So people, once you evangelize this internally, there's a buzz going on, people are familiar with this, they can actually do self-service BI. So let's just go back to our slides now, and we have a couple of things left. IT dashboard. So what I shared with you was half of the story. The second half is really the IT. IT gets to have these dashboards available from within SharePoint, of course, from PowerPivot usage. So if we have 15 customers, we can see those 15 out of those 15 files that we have. Let's just say one file, one model per customer. Usually there are 4 or 5 models per customer. If you have 15 models from each of those customers, which models are being used by how many users? Sales analysis or Movely, in this case, by the way, has most of the users and queries. And then you could have a nice dialogue with those teams. Okay, maybe you might want to bring this data to EDW. And also you get to see what kind of users, what kind of memory, capacity, all kinds of stuff you can see there. And I'm going to show you a live demo right now for our own real IT dashboard within Microsoft. So I'm going to take you to one of our IT dashboards that we have, real IT dashboard we have within CBI, where we have information about 15 customers that are onboarding to this solution right now. And I'm just going to go there. So if you just take a minute right now, but I'm going to show you a real dashboard for our PowerPivot online service from all the customers that are onboarding right now. And of course, beta right now, and you'll see when we, it's UI environment usage right now I'm showing you. So PowerPivot IT dashboard, once it shows up, what it will show you is that we have some Excel parts here. Out of the box, by the way, this dashboard I'm showing you was out of the box from PowerPivot. So I'm going to enable Excel data to be shown here. And what you see here is, again, you see here average CPU usage over time, every day, what was happening, the memory, query response times, memory usage, all the good stuff. You can see that. On 225, 25th, I think that was this 92% right there. So then, if you go here, this is very interesting, workbook activity. Each of these bubbles, by the way, are those models of files if you have. And on the x-axis, you see the number of queries executed, and on the y-axis, the number of users. So we could actually play this live. You see this? For each of the files that, let's say this is the one we're talking about. So you can see this over time. You see the dates changing here? So 3/6/12/12, 12/19. What was happening in terms of actual usage? How many users were accessing and how many queries were being fired? See, this is all available through IT. This is very interesting, real story. We had no idea about these, for some of these 15 customers, we had no idea about these applications that they had before on their own desktops. Now suddenly we have exposure to, I would say, at least 20 applications from those 15 customers, which are now hosted on IT environment because of PowerPivot. And we get to know about them. So this is the application which is, for example, MS Ops PI, PowerPivot Gallery. So this is one of those, let's say this is the application. We know the larger the bubble, more usage and everything. We can have a good dialogue with them. And also you get to see workbook activity here. See, these are the individual workbooks which are published from each of these businesses. And the workbook activity you can go to. And here you get to see the number of users and also the queries or the hits and that you had. You see that. So for example, here the top workbooks, last 52 weeks, we've had, 10,000 queries fired up to this. Distinct users are only 4, it's a beta program for them. And the maximum size is this one. So just like that, you can take a look at the real application usage, you have visibility. Okay. So lastly, my last slide, top 10 lessons learned while delivering BI to the masses. So as I shared with you, we have been delivering BI to the masses using CBI, consolidated BI within Microsoft. So what are some of the lessons that we learned? I'm going to go through quickly in 2 minutes. Otherwise, this slide alone can take 1 hour. So, number 10, what to do first? Do we build EDW first, or we do reporting consolidation first? What we did within Microsoft IT, as we did both in parallel, but we've definitely focused on BI reporting consolidation first. People have been doing BI for years and years, decades even. They have reports. Why not create a catalog, report catalog, one BI portal using SharePoint, and ask them to bring it all into this one catalog, one IT hosted, supported infrastructure, one BI portal. Once they started doing that, and if they could do this in 3 weeks or less even, what if we could say it to customers? We have, right now, this is the reality, we say, in 3 weeks you can bring all this to our solution. Then they suddenly start respecting IT much more because IT is agile. In parallel, we are building EDW. It takes time. We now have 50 plus data sources in EDW, and but the reporting consolidation we did within 6 months of creating the organization. And in parallel, we have been onboarding customers to EDW, and on EDW has a big pipeline now. Lots of excitement happened because of this reporting consolidation first. How do you get the first sponsorship? Obviously, it's hard. So our tip is work hard on that first demo that you create for a sponsor, for a real sponsor, for your first sponsor. Choose a realistic scenario for your demo. Spend your time on those prototypes. Because once you get funding for your first sponsor for your reporting consolidation or BI, then you architect with big enterprise vision. So obviously you got funding from two ways of funding from CIO and IT or funding from a business. If you get a funding from a business, and if you architect this reporting solution, the BI solution, with an enterprise vision in mind, the keyword is platforms, then you could actually easily take that application you created for this first sponsor. You can take that to other applications. Like in CBI, we had first customer sponsored, but now it's being used by 57 other customers. The architect with big enterprise vision, should we actually give control of the enterprise report catalog to business folks and enable self-service BI? If you walk away with one thing from this presentation today, that would be this one. Yes. Give control of those individual folders, of those individual sites, if you would, to businesses to create reports. But at the end of the day, there has to be some governance from IT. So IT should do a good job of managing, securing, and enabling the overall big catalog, but allow self-service BI to nourish. How do we implement multi-layer seamless security? This was a big challenge for us, obviously, when we implement our CBI solution, is to have seamless security. When an end user goes to a website, end user should not have to enter any user ID and password. And yes, you have to worry about security to have this all the way cell-level security, seamless security. Can we implement zero footprint deployment for masses using SharePoint? This was one of the key reasons for success of our deployment to 30,000 users. Using SharePoint and using all the Microsoft BI tools, we were able to have zero footprint deployment. So we have scorecards which are open to 90,000 plus people at Microsoft. Nothing needs to be installed on their desktops. So not even ActiveX controls to consume BI from reporting services, performance point, to Clarity, Excel services, and even PowerPivot, same thing. What about regional deployment? I already shared that with you. You either do regional deployment or set the right expectations with your users for the first release. How do you evangelize and achieve enterprise adoption? This is obviously a topic nearest to my heart. I'm a technology evangelist by Microsoft for BI within Microsoft IT. So do a good job of evangelizing. Provide jumpstart training to your business users. They will appreciate that. And then have an onboarding process I shared with you. Achieving enterprise adoption. What front-end tools do we use for various scenarios? Within IT, we are using reporting services. Reporting services happens to be our number one most used tool as part of CBI. For operational BI, even technical BI, some people even have dashboards in BI in reporting services. But for dashboarding, the key tool we are using within Microsoft is Excel services and performance point services. How do you achieve high customer satisfaction? Well, improve. And we have customer satisfaction surveys after the onboarding experience, and people fill surveys, and then we hear them, we improve. That's how you keep improving every day, right? So resources, some additional content on Microsoft IT deployment and best practices can be found on not only Microsoft website, but also IT Showcase webcast we have available right here. And here are some good links for PowerPivot. So PowerPivot.com is an official site. PowerPivot Twins is an interesting, very interesting site with lots of good content. And of course, Microsoft.com/BI is the website for BI. And there are some other sites listed for you. So I really appreciate your participation today. So thanks a lot for joining us today. So Scott, go ahead.
Thanks, Sanjay. So if you have any questions for our presenter, you could go ahead and submit those now using the Q&A pane, and he can get to those offline. I would like to remind everyone that you may print a PDF of today's slides by clicking Control-P. You can either print or save those slides directly onto your computer for your convenience. And you should all be seeing a new page with links to a survey now in your slide area. If you could take a moment to fill that out before you log off, we appreciate any feedback you leave for us. All you need to do is follow the links provided to complete the evaluation. If you've registered online, click on that, fill in your information. It will take you to a short survey page. If you've done it before, please do this again. We need a survey completed for each and every webcast to let us know how we're doing. And I'd like to extend a special thanks to Sanjay Soni for today's presentation. And thank you all for joining us today. You may disconnect from the audio portion of today's conference.
And we have some questions, Scott. Can we go through those?
Oh, there are a couple questions in the, yeah, you could go ahead and answer that.
Yeah, sure. So what's the number one question is, what is the maximum number of rows that have been tested for upload with the PowerPivot? I do not have that information, but I have seen demos with 100 million rows, which you can import from various data sources. And I have heard about the numbers of 1 billion. I cannot claim, but I have seen the demos of 100 million rows. Yeah? But essentially, memory is the key. So memory is important, when you have those millions of rows. And then, of course, second question is, can PowerPivot work with Excel 2007? So PowerPivot cannot work with Excel 2007. PowerPivot is really part of Excel 2010, and it's an add-in to Excel 2010. There are two components. One is client component, part of Excel 2010, which gets installed on the client machine, and then other one is the server component, which is part of SharePoint 2010, that's installed over there. And yes, one of the interesting comment was, okay, PowerPivot is still a small community, but it's definitely growing. I can assure you that. And it's very popular because suddenly there's a way for you to bring those shadow applications for IT to IT-hosted server, then you get to have visibility. And because BI has been happening in Excel, might as well make it more powerful and allow users, IT to have visibility. That's the goal. So again, I want to, another question was about CBI as well. So can they know more about CBI? There's a webcast available on CBI from IT Showcase as well that we delivered 2 weeks ago. You are welcome to watch that one. So that's how we have been delivering BI to the masses. So more information to come on PowerPivot data to SharePoint Online in future. So at this point, we do not have that information about when will that be enabled as part of SharePoint. So, okay, that was great. Thank you very much. We totally enjoyed presenting today. Please fill the evaluation forms, and we look forward to seeing you in the next webcast. Thank you.